discovered my wife of 42 years was secretly laundering millions of dollars through a family trust on the very day she filed for divorce. Instead of quietly exposing her, I chose to become the public villain, cutting off contact with my family, freezing accounts, and ruining my reputation. Welcome to Brian's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Victor Sterling. I'm 67 years old, and for the last 40 years I've run one of the most respected private trust funds in New York. Billions of dollars passed through my hands, money meant for charities, for families, for legacies that were supposed to last generations. People trusted me with their life's work because I was always cold, always careful, always in control. I didn't smile much in meetings. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at the numbers, looked at the people, and made decisions that protected what was entrusted to me. I built that reputation the hard way. I grew up with nothing, put myself through school working nights, learned early that money doesn't care about feelings. It only cares about rules and discipline. So I became the man who followed every rule, who never took a shortcut, who never let emotion cloud a single transaction. My colleagues called me the Iceman behind my back. My wife, Eleanor, used to laugh and say I could freeze a room just by walking into it. Maybe she was right. Eleanor and I were married for 42 years. We have 2 children, Julian, our son, 38, who always wanted my approval more than he admitted, and Chloe, our daughter, 35, who fought me every step of the way but still lived under the protection my money provided. We had the big house in Connecticut, the apartment in Manhattan, the vacations that looked perfect in photographs. From the outside, we were the picture of success. But inside, things had been breaking for a long time. I knew Eleanor and I had grown apart. I knew the children resented how much of my life I gave to the trust instead of to them. I accepted it. I thought distance was the price of responsibility. I remember that moment clearly, the one that changed everything. I was sitting at my desk in the Connecticut study, ready to sign my retirement papers after 40 years building the fund. My golden fountain pen was in my hand, hovering over the signature line, when my assistant Harold walked in quietly and placed a plain envelope beside the document. No stamp, no sender, just my name typed on the front. As I started to open it, the door opened again, and Eleanor, my wife of 42 years, stepped in holding a folder. She was dressed sharply, her face calm but determined. Without a word at first, she set the folder down right next to the envelope. I could see the words "divorce petition" stamped clearly on it. I pulled out the anonymous letter and read it. Quickly, it laid out a money laundering scheme running through our trust, naming specific transactions, dates, and pointing directly at Eleanor and Marcus, the chief legal counsel we'd trusted for years. Eleanor spoke first. "Victor, it's time. I've had the lawyers prepare this. We both know the marriage has been over for a long time. The kids are grown. Let's end it cleanly." I looked at her, then back at the letter. Everything clicked into place. The timing wasn't coincidence. This was the moment. She waited for my reaction, expecting anger or pleading, but I stayed calm. I took the letter, held it up so she could see I was reading something important, and then, slowly, deliberately, tore it straight down the middle. The rip echoed in the quiet room. Her eyes widened for just a second before she hid her surprise. "What was that?" she asked, her voice sharper. "Nothing worth keeping," I said evenly, letting the 2 halves fall onto the desk. I didn't sign the retirement papers. I didn't sign the divorce papers either. I simply looked at her with complete calm and said, "We'll talk later, Eleanor. I need time." She hesitated, then nodded, picked up her folder, and walked out, heels clicking down the hall. The second the door closed, I picked up the torn pieces, smoothed them out, and read them again. The accusations were too detailed to be fake, and now I knew. If I was going to expose what she and Marcus were doing, I couldn't react like a hurt husband. I had to become something else entirely. I had to let them think they were winning, while I set the trap. That's when I decided to become the villain in my own story. And that's how the illusion decree began. The 40th anniversary party took place in the grand ballroom of a Manhattan hotel. Chandeliers sparkled above 300 guests, dressed in tuxedos and gowns. Waiters moved smoothly with trays of champagne, and the string quartet filled the air with soft music. White roses decorated every table. On the surface, everything appeared perfect and luxurious. But the celebration felt hollow, a thin cover over years of distance. I stood alone near the tall windows overlooking the city lights, holding a glass of scotch I had no intention of drinking. My expression remained cold and controlled as always. My eyes stayed fixed on Eleanor across the room. She wore a midnight blue gown that caught the light with every movement. She stood in the center of a small group, laughing freely. Marcus, the chief legal counsel I had mentored for 10 years, stood close beside her. He leaned in to say something private, and Eleanor laughed again, placing her hand lightly on his arm. It was genuine laughter, the kind she had not shared with me in decades. Thomas, my trusted bodyguard, appeared at my side without drawing attention. He kept his gaze forward as he spoke quietly. "Sir, this was hand-delivered to the service entrance 30 minutes ago, no name on it." He slipped a small black box into my hand and stepped away, blending back into the crowd. I waited a moment, then moved casually to the window's edge where the reflection hid my actions. I opened the box. Inside lay a matte black USB drive bearing the EA Official Trust Fund emblem, the same symbol used on every secured document. For 40 years, a single deep scratch marred the emblem, deliberately, as if someone had marked it with purpose. I closed the box and slid it into my inner jacket pocket. Then I looked back at Eleanor and Marcus. His hand now rested on the small of her back as he guided her toward the balcony doors. She did not pull away. I tightened my grip on the box until its edges pressed sharply into my palm. My face revealed nothing, but everything inside me shifted. I walked directly toward them through the crowd. Eleanor noticed me approaching and smiled brightly. "Victor, there you are. Marcus and I were just discussing how touching your retirement speech will be next month." Marcus extended his hand with his usual confident smile. "Happy anniversary, Victor. 40 years is truly remarkable." I shook his hand firmly, meeting his eyes. Remarkable indeed. I turned to Eleanor. "We need to speak privately. Right now." Her smile held, but her eyes sharpened slightly. "In the middle of our own party?" "Yes," I said evenly. "Right now," Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," I replied. "Just a matter between husband and wife." Eleanor hesitated briefly, then nodded. "Of course. Excuse us, Marcus." We stepped into the quieter side corridor where the music faded behind the closed door. As soon as we were alone, I faced her. "I know about the money laundering through the trust," I said calmly. "The offshore accounts, the transfers, you and Marcus." For a split second, her composure cracked. Surprise flashed across her face before she recovered. "Victor, you've been working too hard. You're seeing things that aren't there." "I have proof," I said. She studied me for a long moment. "You have nothing." I held her gaze without responding, then turned and walked back toward the ballroom. She remained in the corridor. Inside, the toast had begun. Glasses clinked. Guests cheered our perfect marriage. Eleanor and Marcus soon returned to the crowd, resuming their easy laughter. I returned to my spot near the windows. Hand closed tightly around the scratched USB in my pocket. It felt heavy, like a loaded weapon. In that moment, surrounded by false celebration, I made my decision. I would let them believe I was weakening. I would let them think I was becoming erratic and cruel. I would become the villain they expected. Only then would they lower their guard completely. Only then would they make the mistake that would end them. After the anniversary party, I drove back to the Connecticut house alone. It was past 2 in the morning when I entered my study and locked the door. The room was quiet, lit only by the green desk lamp. I took the scratched USB from my pocket and placed it on the leather blotter. I needed to remind myself what all of this had been for. I opened the locked cabinet behind the desk and removed the original ledger, the thick leather-bound book that recorded every transaction of the trust fund from the very first day, 43 years ago. I carried it to the desk and opened it under the light. Page after page showed my handwriting. Every deposit, every allocation, every family legacy I had protected. I turned the pages slowly until I reached to the above entry dated the day I married Eleanor. There, in red ink, I had underlined one sentence I wrote when I was young and still believed the world was fair. Money is a tool, integrity is the asset. I rested my hand on the page and stared at the words. That single line had guided every decision I ever made. I had sacrificed time with my children, evenings with Eleanor, weekends others spent relaxing, all to keep the trust clean and honest. Now the same trust was being used to launder money, and the people closest to me were behind it. I closed my eyes for a moment. The house was completely silent. Then I opened them and closed the ledger with both hands. As the cover fell shut, my eyes moved to the small security monitor on the wall. I tapped the screen to cycle through the house. Cameras. I stopped on the master bedroom feed. The walk-in closet light was still on. Eleanor's private safe, the one hidden behind her gowns, was open. On the middle shelf sat another USB drive. Black casing, trust fund emblem. No scratch, exactly like the one in front of me, except perfect and unmarked. I leaned closer to the screen. 2 identical drives. One delivered to me tonight with a deliberate scratch, like a warning from someone who wanted me to know the truth. One hidden in Eleanor's safe, probably containing the real records she and Marcus thought was secret. 2 drives, 2 different secrets. Was the scratched one sent by an ally trying to help me expose them? Or was it a trap designed to make me act too soon? I sat back in the chair. The ledger rested closed beside the scratched USB. The monitor showed Eleanor's safe still open, the clean drive clearly visible. I touched the ledger cover once more, feeling the raised lettering. Money is a tool, integrity is the asset. That was the only thing that mattered now. I turned off the monitor. The room went darker. I slipped the scratched USB into the hidden compartment inside the ledger's back cover, where no one would ever find it. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and left the study. The illusion decree would begin in the morning. I would let Eleanor and Marcus believe they were winning. I would let the world believe I was losing everything. And when they finally stepped into the open, I would be ready with both drives and the truth they thought they had buried forever. The morning after discovering the second USB in Eleanor's safe, I made the call that would set the rest of the plan in motion. I sat at my desk in the New York office, the city skyline gray behind the windows. Rain tapped against the glass. I picked up the secure line and dialed a number I had researched carefully over the previous weeks. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Zara Klein. Miss Klein, this is Victor Sterling. I need to meet with you today. In person. 1 hour. My office. There was a brief pause. Mr. Sterling, I followed your career for years. Of course. I'll be there. 58 minutes later, my assistant showed her in. Zara was 32, sharp-featured, dark hair pulled back neatly. She wore a charcoal suit that fit perfectly, carrying only a slim leather briefcase. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, professional habit before settling on me. I did not stand to greet her. I did not smile. I simply gestured to the chair across the desk. She sat. How can I help you, Mr. Sterling? I slid a thick manila envelope across the polished wood. It landed in front of her with a soft thud. Inside are full access details to every personal account held by my son Julian and my daughter. Chloe banking, credit cards, investment portfolios, trusts. Everything. Zara's expression remained neutral, but her fingers rested on the envelope without opening it. And what exactly do you want me to do with this? Information. I am retaining you personally. Your only client on this matter will be me. Your only task will be to monitor every transaction, every withdrawal, every transfer made by either of them. I want daily reports, written, delivered by hand. No emails, no electronic trail. She studied me for a long moment. You want me to watch your own children's finances? Yes. May I ask why? No. She nodded once, accepting the boundary. Rate. Double your usual hourly, paid weekly in cash, plus a retainer of $200,000, wired. Today. Zara picked up the envelope and opened it. Just enough to confirm the contents, printed statements, access codes, signatures already prepared for limited power of attorney. She closed it again. I'll need complete discretion, she said. No one else sees these reports. Not your assistants, not your wife, no one. Agreed. She slipped the envelope into her briefcase. I'll start immediately. First report tomorrow morning. I leaned forward slightly. One more thing. When you observe unusual activity, large withdrawals, attempts to liquidate assets, contact with media, you do not intervene. You simply record and report. Understood? Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Understood. I stood, signaling the meeting was over. She rose as well. As she reached the door, she paused and turned back. Her gaze flicked upward to the small security camera mounted in the corner, the one that recorded every meeting in this office. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out her phone and pressed a button. A soft beep confirmed the microphone was muted. Then she stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. How much do you trust me, Victor? The question hung in the air between us. I met her eyes without flinching. Enough to give you access to everything my children own. Not enough to answer personal questions. A faint smile touched her lips. Respect. Or something else. I couldn't tell. She unmuted her phone, nodded once, and said clearly for the recording, I'll begin work immediately, Mr. Sterling. Thank you for your confidence. Then she left. I sat back down and stared at the closed door. Zara Klein was the best independent forensic attorney in the city. She had taken down 3 corporate fraud rings in the last 5 years. I had chosen her because she was brilliant, ruthless, and, most importantly, unconnected to anyone in my world. But that whisper at the end changed things. How much do you trust me? It wasn't fear in her voice. It was challenge or warning. Did she already know more than she should? Had someone gotten to her first? Or was she simply testing how far I would go? I turned to the window. Rain streaked down the glass. 2 USB drives, 2 secrets. Now a lawyer who might be ally or threat. The illusion decree required absolute control. Every piece had to move exactly as planned. My children would suffer. My reputation would burn. Eleanor and Marcus would believe they had won. But if Zara was not completely mine, the entire plan could collapse before it began. I picked up the secure phone again and dialed. Thomas, my bodyguard. Follow Miss Klein when she leaves the building. Discreetly. I want to know where she goes, who she meets, what she does with that envelope. Yes, sir. I hung up. Then I opened the drawer and took out the scratched USB. I turned it over in my fingers. I had to know whose side everyone was on, because the next moves would hurt the people I loved most, and I could not afford a single mistake. Zara's whispered question echoed in the quiet office. How much do you trust me? Not blindly, but enough to use her until I knew the truth. That evening, after the news channels had shown the mansion scenes many times, I sat alone in the darkened study of the quiet Connecticut house. The staff had gone home, leaving the rooms empty and silent. I turned on the television with low volume and watched the reports repeat the same clips of Julian shouting angrily at reporters and Chloe crying outside the locked gates while headlines called me unstable and cruel. My phone rang and buzzed several times. Julian left a voicemail saying loudly, "Dad, how could you do this to us? Call me back and explain." While Chloe sent texts that read, "I hate you right now, I really do." I listened to the message once, read the texts, and deleted them all without replying. Later, the broadcast cut to Eleanor standing calmly outside her lawyer's Manhattan office. Reporters crowded around her with microphones. One asked, "Mrs. Sterling, were you surprised by your husband's actions today?" Eleanor looked straight at the camera and answered softly, "Victor has carried enormous pressure for many years. Retirement has been very hard for him. I am saddened by his choices, but I hope he finds peace soon. My children and I will be all right." She appeared composed and caring, exactly the sympathetic figure the public would believe. I knew better. The small, satisfied smile she had shown earlier at the mansion told the real story. Today's events had not upset her. They had helped her. She now felt certain that I was losing control, which meant she and Marcus would move faster with their laundering plan. An email arrived from Zara listing early activity. Julian had booked 2 Manhattan hotel rooms and withdrawn cash, while Chloe had emailed 3 tabloid editors offering an exclusive family story. Their quick, desperate steps were exactly what the plan required. I closed the email, stood, and walked to the window overlooking the empty driveway lit by security lights. No cars returned, no family came home. The house that had held our life for decades now belonged only to me for the moment. I went upstairs to the master bedroom one last time. Eleanor's clothes still hung neatly in the closet. Her perfumes lined the dresser, and everything remained exactly as she had left it. I stood in the doorway, remembering warmer times, then quietly closed the door and returned. Downstairs, in the study, I opened the secure laptop, added a brief line to the encrypted file. Phase 1 complete, family publicly severed, opponents confident, monitoring active, and saved it before shutting the computer. The pain of my children's anger was real and heavy, but the plan needed their genuine suffering to look convincing. Their public pain made them seem innocent and made me appear heartless. Eleanor's calm statement and earlier smile proved she felt safe to finish the scheme with. Marcus. Tomorrow the criticism would grow louder, and my continued silence would strengthen the story that I had lost my grip. I would offer no interviews or explanations. I would let everyone believe Victor Sterling had become a cold, broken man. Only then would the evidence gather quietly until the right moment to reveal the truth. Eleanor believed victory was near. She did not see that the chaos she welcomed was the trap I had carefully built. When she and Marcus stepped fully into it, everything would change. I turned off the television, leaving the house in complete darkness, and sat there for a long while with the weight of what I had begun. 2 days after the mansion lockdown became the leading story on every major network, I sat alone in the spacious living room of the Connecticut house. The staff had departed for the evening, leaving the room silent and dimly lit by the glow from the television screen. I kept the volume low and watched the channels cycle through the same coverage of my children's public suffering. The footage repeated endlessly. Julian standing outside the locked gates, shouting angrily to the gathered reporters. "My father has gone completely mad. He's cutting us off without any warning or reason." While Chloe stood beside him, tears streaming down her face as she told the cameras, "He threw us out of the home we grew up in. We have nowhere to go now." Reporters pressed for more details, and both children answered with raw anger and genuine pain that convinced every viewer of their innocence. Analysts filled the airtime discussing my supposed emotional collapse, linking it to years of pressure and retirement stress, while headlines branded me cold, unstable, and cruel. I picked up the secure phone from the table beside my chair, opened Julian's contact, and held my thumb over the call button. One phone call could reveal the entire truth to him. One conversation could end his confusion and spare him the ongoing hardship. The broadcast switched to a live report outside a Manhattan restaurant. The caption read, "Eleanor Sterling meets with trust advisors amid escalating family crisis." Eleanor stepped from her car in a dark coat. Marcus waited at the entrance. He greeted her with a warm smile, took her coat, and shook her hand firmly while cameras flashed around them. They held the handshake longer than necessary, and Eleanor returned a small, confident smile before they walked inside. Together, I stared at the screen as the segment replayed. The moment in slow motion, the handshake, the shared smile, Marcus guiding Eleanor through the door. I lowered the phone and placed it back on the table without making the call. That handshake was not simple support. It was partnership. It was confirmation that Eleanor and Marcus now felt secure enough to advance their laundering scheme. They believed my focus on family chaos left the trust unprotected and vulnerable. I stared at the screen as the segment replayed. The moment, the handshake, the shared smile, Marcus ushering Eleanor through the door. I lowered the phone and set it back on the desk, not making the call. That handshake wasn't mere support. It was collusion, confirmation that Eleanor and Marcus felt secure enough to push their money laundering plot forward. They believed my focus on the family chaos had left the trust fund unprotected. I leaned back in my chair and watched the restaurant footage once more. Then I switched off the television, plunging the room into total darkness. I sat still for hours without moving or contacting anyone. I didn't call Julian or Chloe. I didn't send a message or an explanation. The plan required their real pain to continue, convincingly. It required the public to see me as heartless and out of control. It required Eleanor and Marcus to grow, increasingly confident. The handshake had solidified their alliance and made the choice clear. I would remain silent. I would allow my children to give additional interviews and share more painful stories. I would permit the world to deepen its contempt for me. The illusion decree depended on the opposition, feeling strong and close to victory. That handshake proved they did. The trap was operating exactly as designed. I would continue playing the villain, no matter the cost to my family or myself. A week after the handshake between Eleanor and Marcus played on every financial channel, I returned to the New York office and immediately summoned the senior trading team to the conference room. I stood at the head of the table and delivered the orders in a steady voice. Sell the trust's most symbolic assets, the flagship blue-chip stocks held for decades, the prime Manhattan real estate parcels, and the long-term municipal bonds that carried the Sterling name, all at prices 20 to 30% below current market value, with execution starting today and no public statements from anyone on the team. The executives exchanged uneasy glances, and the head trader asked directly, "Victor, these sales will erase hundreds of millions in value. Are you certain about this direction?" I answered. Without hesitation, execute the orders exactly as given en route. All confirmations straight to me. The trades processed within hours. Alerts flooded financial wires and screens. Sterling Trust conducts massive fire sale. Billions lost in apparent panic moves. Victor Sterling's personal crisis now, threatening client portfolios. The trust's reported valuation dropped sharply, and every report connected the losses to my supposed emotional breakdown. I remained in the office late, reviewing the final execution reports on my monitor until the last confirmation arrived. I closed the files, stood, and walked to the door. I turned the handle and opened it. Marcus stood waiting just outside, dressed in a perfect navy suit and holding 2 cups of coffee. One cup was already placed on my desk inside, still steaming. He smiled with complete confidence and extended the second cup toward me. "Long day, Victor," he said smoothly. "Figured you could use this. We need to talk about protecting what's left of the trust." I looked past him to the coffee on my desk that no assistant had brought, then back to his face. He had entered my private office without permission. His presence here, his calm smile, the prepared coffee. All of it confirmed he now felt completely secure. He believed the trust was slipping, that I was making reckless mistakes, and that the path was clear for him and Eleanor to seize control. I took the offered cup without drinking and stepped aside to let him enter. He walked past me, still smiling, and sat in the chair across from my desk as if he already belonged there. The door closed behind us with a soft click. The opposition had penetrated deep into my territory, and Marcus did not realize he had just stepped exactly where I wanted him. While Victor faced Marcus in the office, Zara sat in her dimly lit Manhattan apartment, late that night, surrounded by 3 glowing screens that displayed every financial and digital move Julian and Chloe had made since the lockdown. Zara had been tracking them meticulously, sending Victor sealed daily reports with all the details, and the picture of their desperation was becoming clearer by the hour. Julian listed 3 of his most valuable watches for sale on a luxury resale platform: a Rolex Daytona, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, and a vintage Audemars Piguet, adding urgent notes that he needed immediate cash and would accept offers well below market value, while Chloe simultaneously emailed 4 tabloid editors and 2 major gossip sites offering an exclusive inside story on the Sterling family collapse, complete with childhood photos and a promised in-person interview for the right price. One editor responded almost instantly, proposing a meeting the next morning and naming a substantial payment. Zara captured screenshots of every listing, bid, and email exchange, adding them methodically to the report she would deliver to Victor by hand the next day. The children's actions painted them as innocent, victims scrambling for survival, which only deepened the public's view of Victor as heartless, exactly the image the illusion decree required. Then her intercom buzzed, announcing a small unmarked package waiting in the lobby. Zara retrieved it, brought it upstairs, and carefully opened the box to find an older iPhone sealed in a plastic evidence bag, accompanied by a brief note that read, "Recovered from Chloe Sterling's hotel room. Trash. Thought this might be useful." She powered the phone on, found no passcode blocking access, and quickly located a hidden message folder, labeled simply M. The thread contained recent texts between Chloe and Eleanor, with the most critical exchange dated 2 days before the lockdown. Chloe had written, "Mom, something's really wrong with Dad. He's been so angry and distant lately." Eleanor replied, "Stay calm, sweetheart. It's almost over. Can you meet me tomorrow night?" Chloe answered, "Of course." "Where?" And Eleanor sent the details. "Same place as always. 52 West 18th Street. Basement entrance, 8 p.m. When Chloe asked if she needed to bring anything, Eleanor responded, "Yes, bring the drive I gave you last month. We may need it tonight." Zara read the messages several times, recognizing the address as a nondescript building tied to trust shell companies and understanding that the thing, almost certainly, referred to a clean data drive containing incriminating records. This was concrete evidence of a planned secret meeting between mother and daughter. She connected the phone to her laptop and copied the entire thread, including timestamps and any recoverable deleted fragments, saving the files securely. She opened her draft report for Victor and began typing the new discovery. Knowing this address and phrase could give him a direct lead to pursue, she stopped typing. After a long pause, she highlighted the section and deleted it entirely. She moved the copied files to a separate, encrypted folder on her private drive, hidden and unlabeled. She completed the report with only the watch, sales and tabloid contacts, printed it, sealed the envelope, and set it aside for morning delivery. Zara now possessed a crucial piece of the puzzle, the exact address and the words, "Bring the thing tonight." She chose not to tell Victor. She closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and sat quietly in the dark apartment. Zara was playing her own game, and for now, she was the only one who knew it. Marcus closed the door behind him with a soft click and immediately placed his coffee cup on the desk before leaning forward with that familiar, confident smile he had worn for years in board meetings. He opened a leather folder and slid a thick, legal document across the polished wood surface toward me while saying in his smooth, measured voice, "Victor, we both know the current situation has become untenable for the trust, with the recent asset sales alarming the board and major clients alike, and the press openly questioning your judgment. Under all this personal stress, I remained seated without touching the document and asked calmly, 'What exactly are you proposing?' Marcus," he tapped the folder lightly and replied, "A temporary transfer of full management authority to Eleanor, who has the respect of the clients and decades of involvement in operations, allowing the board to cite concerns about your mental capacity during this difficult period, with everything structured as protective rather than permanent, so that we can review the arrangement once stability returns." I picked up the pages and read through them slowly, noting the carefully worded clauses about impaired judgment, irregular transactions, and family conflict affecting professional duties, complete with references to anonymous board statements and attached printouts of the low-price sales I had personally ordered. Marcus watched me closely and continued, "This is not personal, Victor. It is about preserving the legacy you built, and Eleanor fully supports the move. So signing now keeps everything internal and dignified." I set the document down and met his gaze directly, while asking, "How long have you been preparing this?" Answered without hesitation, "The board began discussing contingencies several weeks ago, but your family situation and the recent sales accelerated the process, and we have affidavits ready from medical professionals and staff if needed to support the incapacity claim." I leaned back in my chair and said, "You are threatening a forced ruling if I refuse." Marcus shook his head slightly and responded, "I am offering an elegant solution. Refuse and the board will proceed without your signature, making it public and permanent. But sign and you retain your title, shares, and dignity while we handle the recovery." He pushed a gold pen across the desk, the same brand I always used, and waited with that same confident smile. I took the pen, flipped to the signature page, and signed my name in clear, steady script across the designated line. Marcus exhaled quietly, gathered the pages into his folder, and stood while saying, "Thank you, Victor. This is the right decision for everyone, and Eleanor will be relieved." I nodded once and replied, "Give my wife my regards." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle, and turned back to add, "Take some time to rest. We will manage everything from here." The door closed behind him with another soft click. I sat still for several moments, staring at the empty space where the document had been. Then my gaze drifted to the desk beside my untouched coffee cup, where a single dried tea leaf lay curled in dark green against the wood. I never drank tea in this office. The room was always sealed, no windows opened, no outside food or drink allowed except through my assistant, who knew I preferred only black coffee. Marcus had brought coffee, not tea. Someone else had been in the room. I picked up the leaf carefully between my fingers. A third party had entered my private office, or was still watching. The day after Marcus left my office with the signed document and that mysterious tea leaf still on my desk, I summoned Zara to the New York office without explanation. She arrived promptly, carrying only her slim briefcase and the sealed envelope containing her latest report on Julian and Chloe. I did not offer her a seat. I waited until the door closed and then placed the envelope unopened on the desk between us. "You have been holding back information," I said directly. "The reports are complete on surface transactions, but you have access to more than bank statements and emails. I need everything." Zara met my gaze without flinching. "I have given you exactly what you asked for. Daily records of every move your children make." I leaned forward. "Not everything. You recovered Chloe's discarded phone. You found messages between her and Eleanor about a meeting and a drive. You chose not to include them. Her expression hardened. How do you know about the phone? That is not the question, I replied. The question is why you withheld evidence that could have accelerated the plan. Zara opened her briefcase and removed a folder, placing it on the desk. Because I needed to understand the full picture. First, I have been tracking Eleanor's activities longer than you realize. I knew about the conspiracy before you hired me. I knew the USB delivered at the anniversary party was not authentic. It was a plant. I remained silent, waiting. She continued, voice sharp with controlled anger. I took this assignment to confirm who was, playing whom. Your illusion decree is clever, Victor, but it is not the only game in town. Someone else has been feeding you pieces. The scratched drive, the timing of deliveries. I needed to know if you were part of it, or a pawn. I picked up the folder and opened it. Inside were printouts of transactions I had not seen in her reports, offshore movements linked to Eleanor's accounts, dates matching the asset sales I had ordered. You have been investigating me as well, I said. I have been investigating everyone, she answered. And I have concluded you are not the source of the leaks, but you are being watched closely. She reached into her briefcase again and withdrew the original scratched USB, the one delivered at the anniversary party in the small black box. She placed it on the desk between us. I know what game you are playing, she said quietly. But this is not yours. This is what was sent to you. I stared at the drive. The deliberate scratch across the trust emblem caught the light. Someone else had initiated contact. Someone else had been monitoring the entire plan, or helping it. 2 days after Zara handed me the scratched USB and walked out of the office, Eleanor and Marcus moved fast. They scheduled an official board press conference for the following Monday, announcing it through the trust's public relations team as an important update on leadership stability. The invitation list included major clients, regulators, and every financial reporter in the city. Behind the scenes, the final laundering transfers began. Large sums routed through the remaining shell accounts, cleaned through layered transactions that would be nearly impossible to trace once completed. Eleanor signed off on each one personally, using the temporary authority from the document I had signed. Marcus handled the legal cover, backdating approvals and preparing affidavits that painted my recent decisions as evidence of incapacity. They worked late in the trust's secure transaction office, a windowless room on the 42nd floor with encrypted terminals and soundproof walls. Eleanor reviewed the final batch of transfers, while Marcus stood beside her, checking the press release draft. This ends Monday, Eleanor said quietly as she authorized the last wire. Once the board declares him incapacitated, the remaining assets move to the new structure. No one will question it with the family. Statements and the sales records. Marcus nodded. The clients are already calling for reassurance. After the announcement, they'll accept the change. Victor's silence has convinced everyone he's broken. Eleanor closed the terminal and leaned back. He played his part perfectly. All that public chaos made this easy. They left the office together, lights switching off automatically behind them. The press conference date was set. The transfers were in motion. They believed the trust would be theirs within days. I spent those same days in the Connecticut house. Screens on every wall showing non-stop coverage. Headlines screamed, "Sterling Trust in freefall. Board prepares to remove Victor Sterling." Sources confirm mental health concerns. Clips of Julian and Chloe's interviews played on loop, their faces filled with hurt as they described my cruelty and paranoia. I watched without responding. No statements. No interviews. No denials. The board's announcement leaked early. Monday's press conference would confirm my temporary removal for health reasons, with Eleanor stepping in as interim manager. I sat in the darkened living room, surrounded by the reports of my own incapacity. The secure phone on the table rang once. Unknown number, blocked caller. I answered. A voice, distorted, low, whispered through the line. Illusion decree. They know. The call ended. I set the phone down slowly. My cover was blown. The enemy knew the collapse was staged. They were coming for the secret plan itself. The day after the anonymous call warned me that they know. I scheduled my own emergency press conference in the Trust's main auditorium. I sent the invitations myself through a secure channel. Major media, board members, key clients, regulators. The subject line read simply, Victor Sterling. Important statement. The room filled quickly. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters murmured as Eleanor and Marcus took seats in the front row, both composed and confident. Eleanor wore a dark suit. Marcus, beside her, with a leather folder on his lap. They believed this was my surrender. I walked to the podium alone. No notes, no assistants. The lights were bright, the microphones hot. I opened my mouth to speak. Marcus stood first. He raised a hand and addressed the room directly. Ladies and gentlemen, before Mr. Sterling begins, the board has an urgent announcement. He moved to the podium, gently but firmly guiding me aside. A large screen behind us lit up. The Trust Board has issued a temporary order under governance bylaws, Marcus said smoothly. Effective immediately. Victor Sterling is removed from all management. Duties pending evaluation of mental capacity. This follows recent irregular decisions and family concerns. The screen displayed the signed document I had given him weeks earlier, enlarged for everyone to see. Next came video clips, Julian on camera, saying, "My father has become paranoid and cruel. He cut us off without reason." Chloe tearfully adding, "He's not the man we knew anymore. We're worried about his health." Then medical summaries flashed, fabricated. Reports from concerned physicians citing stress-induced impairment, sleep deprivation, erratic behavior. Marcus concluded, interim authority transfers to Eleanor Sterling. The trust will remain stable. Questions after the family statement. Reporters shouted immediately. Cameras flashed non-stop. Eleanor stood beside Marcus, placing a hand on his arm in a show of unity. I stood at the edge of the podium, silent as planned. The room erupted in chaos. Questions about my health, the fund's future, the family rift. I gripped the podium edge tighter. Then my vision blurred. My chest tightened. I felt my knees buckle. I collapsed forward, hitting the floor hard in front of the cameras. Gasps filled the room. Reporters surged closer. Marcus called for medical help. Eleanor rushed forward, face arranged in perfect concern. The live feeds cut to shocked anchors. Victor Sterling collapses during press conference. Board removes him moments earlier. I lay motionless as paramedics arrived, letting them load me onto a stretcher. The world saw total defeat. In a small control room beneath the hallway, Zara was monitoring a hidden backup camera feed that no one else knew about. She sat alone, the monitors displaying every angle of the auditorium. She held the scratched USB in her palm, the one she had returned to me. She slowly turned it over under the desk lamp. On the back, beneath the logo, a finely engraved inscription became clear, Mother. Zara stared at that single word. The source of the warnings, the drive, the help, was tied to someone Victor never expected, possibly someone long gone. After the collapse at the press conference that every network replayed endlessly, the board immediately placed me under house arrest in the Connecticut mansion, stationing guards at all entrances and monitoring every communication line except the emergency board channel, while Eleanor exercised the authority from the document I had signed to keep me fully isolated. As the public narrative solidified around my apparent mental and physical breakdown, I sat in the dimly lit study with a scratched USB on the desk in front of me. And when I turned it over once again under the lamp to examine the hidden engraving more carefully, the word Mother became unmistakable, connecting every mysterious element I had received in a chain that revealed the full source of the guidance I had followed throughout the plan. The anonymous letter arriving the same day, Eleanor presented the divorce papers, carried the exact watermark my mother used for her personal stationery. The USB delivered at the anniversary party bore the deliberate scratch she placed on authentic items for verification, and the whispered warning call used phrasing she had taught me for family safeguards, proving she had detected the corruption far earlier than I did and established hidden protections, secret accounts, a charitable foundation, evidence trails that she activated even after what everyone believed was her death from cancer 15 years earlier. She had orchestrated the key moments by sending the letter, the drive, and the call exactly when needed to steer the illusion decree toward success. The final weapon remained the fake terminal cancer diagnosis, which I had reserved to compel Eleanor and Marcus to attend one last press conference, convinced my end was imminent and the trust would fall entirely into their control without further resistance. The charitable foundation, secret, untouchable, created decades ago in her name, already contained every dollar from the asset sales I had ordered under the guise of destruction, meaning the illusion decree had transferred the funds safely because she had prepared the protected harbor long before I understood its necessity. I required only the activation code, not the money itself. I picked up the secure phone, the single line they had not disconnected, and dialed Zara, who answered on the first ring without speaking. I delivered the phrase in ancient Greek that my mother had reserved for our deepest family secrets, naming the foundation directly, eternal charity. Silence held for several seconds. Then Zara responded quietly. "I have the code." The counterattack was ready. 3 days after Zara confirmed she had the activation code for the secret charitable foundation, I scheduled one final press conference in the same auditorium where I had collapsed. I sent the invitations through the emergency board channel, marking it urgent and personal, ensuring Eleanor, Marcus, the full board, major clients, and every financial reporter would attend, believing this would be my public surrender and apology before fading away. The room filled quickly on the appointed afternoon. Cameras lined the back. Reporters filled the seats. Eleanor and Marcus arrived early and took front row positions, both dressed impeccably, faces arranged in solemn concern while exchanging quiet, satisfied glances that revealed their confidence. The end was near. I walked to the podium slowly, supported by a cane for effect, wearing a dark suit that hung looser than before. The lights were bright. The room fell silent. I began speaking in a measured, weakened voice. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I've asked you here because I owe explanations to my family, to the board, to our clients, and to the public that has followed recent events." I paused, letting the silence build. Recent medical tests have confirmed what many suspected. I have terminal cancer. The prognosis is months, not years. The stress of these past weeks has accelerated everything. Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed non-stop. Eleanor leaned forward slightly, eyes widening in perfect surprise. Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her arm. I continued. "I apologize to my wife Eleanor, who has stood by the trust through difficult times. I apologize to my children Julian and Chloe, whom I have hurt deeply with my actions. I apologize to the board and clients for decisions that appeared erratic. I'm stepping away completely, effective today, to focus on what time remains." Investors in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Reporters scribbled furiously. Eleanor and Marcus exchanged another glance, this one openly triumphant. Believing the path was now clear, I raised a hand. "Before I leave this podium for the last time, I have one final matter to address with the help of my attorney." Zara walked from the side wing carrying a projector remote. She connected the laptop to the large screen behind me. The room lights dimmed automatically. Eleanor frowned slightly. Marcus leaned forward. Zara stood ready at the controls. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen. A text from Julian. Mom left this on her desk. Thought you should see it. Attached was a photo of a confidential document. Transfer orders for the final laundered funds. Signed by Eleanor and Marcus. Dated today. Zara's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Julian, who had never been part of the plan, had accidentally provided the last missing piece, the direct proof of today's illegal movement. Zara looked toward the podium. The counterattack had everything it needed. I stepped back to the podium after the cancer. Announcement had settled over the room like a heavy blanket, with reporters scribbling furiously and Eleanor exchanging a smug glance with Marcus as they believed the final pieces were falling into place for their complete takeover. Zara pressed the remote, and the large screen behind me lit up with the first slide, a timeline of transactions pulled from the scratched USB that had been delivered at the anniversary party. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said in a steady voice that carried through the microphones, "what you have witnessed these past months was not a breakdown. It was the illusion decree, a carefully executed plan to expose a money laundering conspiracy running through the heart of this trust for years." Gasps rippled through the audience. Eleanor's face tightened. Marcus shifted in his seat. Zara advanced the slides rapidly. The screen displayed offshore account numbers, forged approvals, and layered transfers, all linked directly to Eleanor and Marcus. Data from the USB combined with Zara's months of monitoring and the fresh photo Julian had just texted her. A signed order for today's final illegal wire appeared in clear, enlarged detail. Every asset sale I ordered at low prices, I continued, was routed through protected channels into the ESI, Eternal Charity Foundation, a legitimate entity established decades ago and activated only yesterday. The trust you believed was collapsing is intact and clean. The money you attempted to steal is now untouchable. Eleanor stood abruptly. "This is absurd. Victor is clearly unwell." Marcus rose beside her, voice sharp. "Turn that off. This is defamation." Security personnel I had positioned earlier moved forward from the doors. Federal agents in plain clothes stepped into the aisle, badges visible. I raised my hand. "The evidence is complete. Eleanor Sterling and Marcus Lang have orchestrated the laundering of hundreds of millions through the trust. Arrests are effective immediately." Agents reached the front row. Eleanor protested loudly as cuffs clicked around her wrists. Marcus tried to push past, demanding his lawyer, but agents secured him firmly and led both toward the exit amid flashing cameras. The room erupted in shouts from reporters. Questions flew about the foundation, the transfers, my health. I waited for silence. "To my children, Julian and Chloe," I said clearly, "I apologize for the pain I caused you. You were never part of any conspiracy. Your suffering was necessary to make this trap work, and I am profoundly sorry. Your honor is fully restored today." Julian and Chloe, seated in the back row where Zara had arranged their invitation, stared in shock as cameras turned toward them. I addressed the room once more. "Effective today, all profits from Zara Klein's legal firm for the next 10 years will transfer to Julian and Chloe Sterling. They will operate the firm under her guidance and dedicate 50% of their time to volunteer work with the Eternal Charity Foundation. This is their path to rebuild what was damaged through labor, service, and integrity." The audience quieted. Clients nodded slowly. Board members exchanged glances. I stepped back from the podium. "Finally," I said, voice carrying to every microphone, "a legacy is not the money you accumulate, but the money you reject for conscience. Sometimes, to rebuild a dynasty, you must be willing to be the villain in your own story." Agents moved swiftly down the aisle and reached the front row where Eleanor and Marcus sat. Eleanor rose halfway, her face paling as one agent took her arm and said firmly, "Eleanor Sterling, you are under arrest for money laundering and conspiracy to defraud." She pulled back sharply and protested, "This is outrageous. I've done nothing wrong," while Marcus stood beside her, demanding loudly, I want my lawyer now. This is a setup. But the second agent placed cuffs on his wrists and replied calmly, "You have the right to remain silent," before both were escorted firmly toward the IC exit amid the non-stop flash of cameras and shouted questions from reporters who surged forward only to be held back by the security line. Zara closed the laptop with a quiet snap. The large screen behind the podium went dark. I looked out at the room and said clearly into the microphone, "Justice has been served today. The trust is clean. The stolen funds are secured in the eternal charity foundation, and the corruption is ended." Julian and Chloe, seated together in the back row, stared in stunned silence as reporters turned cameras toward them. I addressed them directly. "Julian, Chloe, your names are cleared. You were never part of any wrongdoing. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you, but it was necessary to reach this moment. Your honor is restored. The foundation my mother had built in secret, the one she protected even after everyone believed she was gone, would now continue its work openly for generations, helping families and causes the way she always intended." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the arrests and announcements. The story was over. My dear friend, did you feel that weight lift with me? Did this story touch something deep inside you? The sacrifices we make for family, for truth, for what is right? Tell me in the comments. What city are you watching from tonight? Have you ever had to carry a heavy secret to protect the ones you love? If this story moved you, if it made you cry or think or feel seen, please support me with a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing these real-life stories to you. Your kindness means everything and lets me continue sharing moments like this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me until the end. You are amazing. I read every comment, and I can't wait to hear from you. On screen right now, you'll see 2 more powerful real-life stories I truly recommend. There are so many more waiting on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so we never miss each other. Until the next story. With all my love and respect.